Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz at the 2015 NAB Show. Hi, this is Larry Jordan, and this interview was recorded live on the trade show floor. For more information, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. One of the fun things about talking with working editors is they've got to take all these wonderful announcements at NAB and actually turn them into something that works, which is why I'm delighted to introduce our next guest, Oliver Peters, head of Oliver Peters Post-Production Services based in Florida. You have got to get a shorter name. Man, anyway, Oliver, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
One of the big announcements coming out today is DaVinci Resolve 12. What did Blackmagic talk about?
Well, they seem to be going down the route of making it a more full-featured, nonlinear editor. People have been interested in another alternative, and this may be the tool. Specifically, they're adding more audio plugins. So better audio support in general, support for VST and audio units plugins, as well as general refinements in terms of how you use it as an editor. There's more basically curve parameters for some of the visual effects that haven't been in there before.
Well, you've been editing since we glued film together and used Scotch tape to attach videotape. Do we need another editor?
Well, I think people liked a lot about Final Cut 10, but they missed tracks, and Resolve may be that sort of in-between product that people desired. I've personally used it a lot for color correction. Performance is challenged when you want it as an editor, and I think that's because the pipeline is really very heavy-duty for good color fidelity, but then that's counterproductive if you want to just rock and roll and slap things together. So hopefully that's improved.
What are some of the other cool things? We've had Ned on talking about new cameras.
Right.
We've had Philip talking about Final Cut 10, and Carrie was talking about Premiere. What are some of the cool things that you're looking forward to see here at the show?
Well, as a general curiosity, I want to see, more about 4K. Not that many really folks are delivering it, but I want to see what the solutions are. Not just the NLE, but what kind of hardware in terms of storage is required to really effectively support a workflow. High dynamic range seems to be a big item, and that requires monitoring and some sort of a standard for high dynamic range. So that's, I think, a very critical. A lot of the announcements on the floor, quite frankly, seem to be more infrastructure related. Folks like Quantel and Sony and that have a lot of products that relate to kind of a transition away from SDI connections and going to IP related connections. Now, I'm a freelance editor, so that doesn't really affect me, but if you're a facility with an infrastructure, then you start looking at oh my gosh, does this mean changing routers and everything else?
I was learning recently that there's a difference between what's called a LUT, a lookup table,
right,
and a CDL, a color decision list.
Yeah.
And are you seeing any trends that are, what a LUT does is it applies a specific look to a clip, as I understand
right,
it. And what a color decision list is like an edit decision list, except it affects color.
Yeah.
And this is my first exposure with a CDL. Are you seeing that, is that something which is in a very niche market, or is it something which we're starting to see expand into the broader market?
Well, I think there's two parts to that answer, right? Because you have LUTs that are sort of mathematical transforms. I've got a flat array log C file, and I want it to be properly represented. So that's more of a technical issue. But that same technology is used for a creative look, and that can be what the DP wanted. They decided something on set and they want that look, or it can be something you use to have a bleach bypass look or some sort of a stylized look. What the CDL is really a sort of a common denominator language for moving color correction information between systems, and you can use a CDL to create a LUT, but a LUT can also be more complicated than that.
So CDL could be equated to an XML file.
Yeah, specifically it translates what most color correction tools think of as lift, gamma, gain. It uses a terminology called slope, offset, and power, essentially in a different way of saying the same thing. And it's got RGB values for those, and then it's got a saturation value. So those things can be expressed in a text file, in a comment, in an XML, and various human-readable formats that can then be moved from system to system. So, for instance, if a DIT tool creates a CDL for a shot and the NLE can understand that information, then the DP basically gets his shot represented in the edit suite without that look being fixed or, so-called baked into the shot.
So we've seen that there's a lot of new announcements talking about infrastructure, and we've seen that there's a lot of new cameras because everybody wants to have a new camera.
Right.
What else should we pay attention to?
Well, monitoring. Everybody's looking for affordable, high-quality monitors that
Almost
are
an oxymoron, isn't it?
Exactly. But I think the days of paying $30,000 for a reference monitor are gone for most users, and so that's something that I think probably the holy grail, but it's something people are looking at.
I've been a big fan of Flanders Scientific for a long time. They've got really nice monitors at a really affordable price. Right. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're showing off in their booth as well. What else are you looking at?
Well, storage. Storage is always...
you can't have enough, can you?
Well, and shared storage particularly, because that's always been a high-ticket item, and that price point is coming down.
There's a new cool thing. Acusys is announcing shared Thunderbolt storage.
Okay.
Where you've got a RAID 5, and you can have multiple people accessing it via Thunderbolt, as opposed to via standard IP or just Thunderbolt Direct Connect. I have not yet seen the product. I've been reading the releases, but that's something that I'm interested in seeing a little later. We're going to have them on the show in a couple days.
Yeah. JMR's a company that a lot of people have looked to. Avid just released what they're calling the ISIS 1000.
And a free version of Media Composer.
Yes. They introduced this initially with Pro Tools as Pro Tools first. Now there will be a Media Composer first, which hasn't completely been decided what's going to be restricted and how that functions. The idea, though, is to present a version of the program that a brand new user, student, whatever, can get acquainted with, can do real projects in, but then, obviously from the company's standpoint, will then turn around and buy the full version. And the trick, of course, is then to roll in their projects into the full version.
Oliver, what website can people go to learn more?
Best way to find me is on my blog, which is digitalfilms.wordpress.com.
And that author is Oliver Peters. And Oliver, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.